Hey, folks, it is January the 21st, and we're going over the first half of chapter 29. And this has to do with the Gracchus brothers, who are going to spend a lot of their times trying to reform Roman law in order to help out the poor Roman citizens. However, it's not going to turn out all that well, and we're going to start seeing the decline of the Republic leading up to the time of emperors. So, kids here in class a moment to talk. And our terms are Roman morality, slavery, amusements, poverty, and Tiberius Gracchus. So no one? We're just silently sitting?
With style. We're sitting with style.
Oh, with style, huh? With moxie.
Yeah, that's the important part.
Yo, Gladiator, aren't those the guys that killed Tekken? Oh my god. Oh, basically it's kind of copy. It's like how. It's like how they actually copy like it's a bit slow. Like you said, 68% of all people are like very poor. So most of them are really south. Some people really have to go rich. Most of them are really having to go rich. Really fun and everything else. But most of them are most of them are out of the south. Slavery becomes really cheap. So some areas work for having to go. Oh, music. We had one after singing and dancing, but then they kind of went farther into like yeah, that's what I told you. Kind of stuff. And having to go fight for the freedom. And then poverty. So poverty is poverty. Like 8 people to pay for
Yeah, actually, okay. Spain is there was this like rice krispie cereal box and it had like it's hard I had it right here.
All right, folks, let's go ahead and begin. So, Brian, back to your seats. All right, so a little bit about some of our reading. So here's a artist's interpretation of a cutout of a typical living area for Roman poor people. Of course, they didn't live in fine villas like you would see with like the patricians. Though many patricians did have nice homes within Rome. Now, throughout a lot of Rome's early history, they had laws against making multi-story homes. And a lot of this had to do with the running theory that the more congested and condensed people lived with one another, the more that crime and immorality would grow. So like going back to like America, like I told you, like a lot of America's founders would read Roman literature and get a lot of their ideas from there. So people like Thomas Jefferson agreed with that. And so that's why like Thomas Jefferson had like this idea of America as like the sprawling movement of small farms out west, try to avoid immorality. So you'd have immoral people running the American Republic. But
Apartments and hotels.
well, yeah. I mean, like, of course, people like Alexander Hamilton strongly disagreed with him. And of course, American industry and modernization would say, hey, we all can't just live on small farms. Alexander Hamilton is probably my least favorite founding father for reasons like beyond
For
that.
hating Thomas Jefferson.
Why? Good reasons.
I disagree with him on a lot of
I'm
things.
going
He's the
to-
same guy who
He
wanted
was
George
going to
Washington to
beat him
become
with
a
a
king.
chair.
I didn't like a lot of his policies. I think he wrote the weakest Federalist Papers too, the ones with like the worst arguments. I don't know. It's just so. All right,
There's
so
a couple things that you didn't like about him, so you just decided not to like him.
and it wasn't him personally. It wasn't him personally. It was his policy. I guess I didn't really like. But
Benjamin Franklin's awesome though.
yeah, Benjamin Franklin had a pretty sordid personal life, but he had a lot of good ideas. I think. All right, so back to the city of Rome. All right, so Rome had a running sewage system, but as you can see, that doesn't mean that everybody's homes. That doesn't mean their homes had like plumbing and stuff like that. So often they would throw their trash, including human body waste, out the windows into the streets, hoping that a nice rain would wash it all away into the sewer system. There were bans in the city to have things like weapons or even animals such as cows or horses. So they didn't have carts. So the rich were often carried by slaves through the streets, in these little like things here, kind of like rickshaws. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, animals like horses, even all the way up going back to American history, like carts and horses would run over and kill people in city streets. It happens. But another thing too is that animals often bring diseases as well. So you get a lot of waterborne diseases whenever you have animal waste, and you already got enough human waste, so why compound the issue? Often you would have multiple families live within one room. The bottom of a lot of these places were, of course, used as shops, which you still find throughout many cities throughout the world today. Romans also had laws against dine-in restaurants. There was something about Roman people believed that dine-in restaurants were a place where people would come up with like plots to overthrow the government. So once again, well, again, remember, they were superstitious. They also thought that left-handed people were naturally more inclined to evil and betrayal. It's where we get the word sinister from, sinistra, left-handed. So, like I said, they're superstitious people. But some of these things had practical reasons. So,
They were so trustworthy of their people.
well, I mean, a right-handed person was more likely to be like
There's a left-handed person literally right
normal to
there.
them. Huh?
That guy with the stick is holding with his
Oh my goodness!
So,
Eat him!
you
Yeah.
Cut his head off.
Oh, baby.
Poor kid.
I'm sorry, Hannah.
Left-handed.
Well, what's funny is that left-handedness is it's a cultural thing, they say, because like some places, like in China, it's almost unheard of, and they think a lot of it has to do with writing styles. Since our writing style is from left to right, for some people they find it more comfortable to write with their left hand starting from left to right. Whereas in places like China, they go from top to bottom, and so a lot of times they're more ambidextrous, which ambidextrous means both
Both.
right hands.
Both hands. Both hands on fire.
No. All right, so once again, squalid streets packed with people. That I don't know what's up with that. I don't know what's with the animal part. Some poor Romans were lucky enough to still have. Excuse me, teacher's talking. It's like super rude. Here, sit your chair down. All right, thanks. All right, so some of them still had like small farms. Of course, if you go to some parts of the world, you'll still see people living in homes like this, like in North Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa and other parts of the world. Simple thatch roof, just using what they had to live. but these were in decline. As we mentioned before, more and more Romans were becoming extremely rich. And so, because of this, like as you've seen in your reading, the price of slavery went super, super downhill. But a lot of and we're going to find, like in American history, we hit periods like that as well.
And he couldn't take care of one, so he had to hire a slave.
Absolutely, and as you saw from our hey guys. So as you saw from our prior reading, the rich, the wealthy patricians, they might have given up some of their political power, but they never backed off on their acquisition of land. And as the Roman armies spread out and expanded Roman holdings, it was the patrician class that was able to claim these lands. And so their land, a lot of them would hold lands far off across Italy, Spain, places like that, but they would choose to live in Rome and essentially just kind of siphon funds from their villas and their estates, while servants of theirs managed like sometimes whole armies of slaves. And as the book says, a lot of Roman authors point out that Roman decadence was on the rise. There was a lot of feasting, a lot of desires for entertainment and luxury, not any of that hard living that the Romans have been used to. There's a in-town villa, villa. Of course, here is. It could very well be. Well, Caecilius wasn't that rich. I mean, he was well off.
He was like
He was like a low patrician.
he was a moderate.
Yeah.
Achilles at the time.
So here we see we have olive groves, all that good stuff, and of course, as we see, like your book's correct to point out that Roman gladiatorial games were on the rise. And these weren't just in Rome, these were throughout a lot of Roman provinces. You would see that you would have your little arena set up, and often you would have prisoners or people condemned to death to fight. And yes, it would have like animal matches and stuff like that. As we get to the Roman Empire, we will talk about how these become more complex. But this was also used as a way, we're going to see that over time, it's going to become more of a theater. So here's a painting of like Christians being persecuted. So a lot of times, like Nero was very famous for making what he called his Nero torches, which he would essentially
Light up
crucify.
Christians.
Yeah, he would crucify Christians and set them on fire.
It's like a reverse. If you're not a witch, you're
There's a lion and there's a tiger down there too.
Yeah, so they were. The thing is, that goes to show they were able to import animals from all over the known world. But we will talk about Christian persecution later on, and of course there was also Jewish persecution with that. But we're going to see that it's because of that Christian forbearance, that ability to over and over again see people accept these fates without complaint often, or even showing signs of pain, would actually eventually kind of make a lot of Romans wonder what's going on here.
So they're just like, well, guess I'll die.
So once again, this was a big fascination for Romans, right? This was now the gladiator
What animal is that?
looks like a leopard to me. Yeah,
Halfway evolved like jaguar. And
yeah, it's not a jaguar. That's from America.
Panther.
And here's a happy lion.
Oh, he looks so happy when he's being stabbed. That's kind of
Leo?
The dude's still dead though.
Here's a like very
Those
happy
look like
lion.
He has a
lizards.
shadow man behind
That
him.
legit looks like the lizard people.
So-
Look like
Shadow man.
Face be gone.
That's why I was ducking. Oh my god.
one bite from a
That
jaguar.
die.
She stole my face.
Yeah. I guess that's what
It looks like this poor gladiator's kind of like tripping.
smack by
Yeah, maybe
Hey,
he got
what is that man?
smacked
What is
by
he
it.
even punching him with? What is that on him?
That's a shield, actually. The thing is,
Why are those shield like 2 inches wide?
well, here's the reason why. Here's the reason. Okay, so, like your book mentions, gladiators begin to be trained, but gladiators had different classes, and so the different class of gladiator, they had they had standard like sets of armor. Like if you were this kind of gladiator, you had to wear this kind of helmet and this kind of armor, and you had to use this kind of weapon. Like it could be like a net and a trident or something like that.
Totally accurate battles.
And they each had their own like fighting style that they learned. But they couldn't be perfectly armored because that would take the fun out of it for the crowd. So each one of them had to have their own weakness and their own strengths. And so some people would kind of like
This
fans.
is literally the first video game.
It kind of is really, or you can almost think about it like different, like if you ever like look at like kung fu films, right? Like the old school ones, they had like different kinds of like fighting style. They'd have like, they would have like,
Karate.
you know, you'd have like Shaolin, you'd have like praying mantis, tiger, dragon style, all these different kinds of kung fu. And of course, famously, if the defeated, often you would have this depiction of triumph where the gladiator looks up to the crowd or to the emperor once we get to the imperial period and look to see if there was a thumbs down, they let the person live. If there was a thumbs up, they slew him.
No, it's the other way around.
Well, they don't really know.
This
That's
is
what the book said.
Yeah.
this is a statue of the mother of the Gracchus brothers, Cornelius. Here and yeah, so
These are my jewels.
yeah, here's Tiberius, who we're gonna
That's who's the baby.
talk about today.
He's very naked.
The baby is his little brother, who we will talk about tomorrow. Here's again a depiction of Tiberius. Though he was a patrician, and we've seen this before, where patricians are so disgusted with how their fellow citizens, the plebeians, are treated, that they try to speak up for them and try to see that they're treated like Roman citizens, but eventually they get murdered. So
That's nice.
It's a deterrent.
deterrent. Yeah, it's a deterrent
Yeah.
from the other patricians. Yeah, they're like, hey, that's our stuff because we said so. So you know.
We're gonna kill you.
All right. So during this period,
It's gonna hurt.
what happens to Roman morality, according to a lot of the authors in? Now, that's a judgment call, but you know, I don't know, enslaving people and killing and watching people get eaten by animals sounds pretty immoral to me.
No, I think that's pretty like opinion based.
Roman
I'm
morality
going to
is
say
based
this,
completely
that
off.
I think there are certain things that we as humanity have to accept are evil despite circumstances. And you can look at the Nuremberg trials after World War II. Whenever we had, they came up to international conclusions that there are certain things you don't do. Like you don't use human beings as test subjects. You don't do genocide.
You don't steal from
You don't do things like that, even if somebody tells you to and you're just following orders. So I think that there's certain things we can certainly say.
You don't hit your dog with a baseball
It's
bat
not.
and shoot that somebody.
So,
You know that from
all right, we'll start laughing when it gets funny. Don't worry. All right, so Roman morality. So what was Roman morality like?
It's based off of completely off. of
money.
Off the mark, yeah. What else?
Roman morality wasn't half good, half bad, because some people were really rich and some people were really poor and they couldn't do anything about it.
Okay,
The
so
richer were happier because you're getting richer, and the poor was doing.
okay, so we'll go with both of that. We'll go with on the decline. Now remember, Romans from our modern Western Judeo-Christian standpoint, we're kind of like, you Romans are super cruel. Like you beat up a city, you kill everybody. Isn't that kind of like wrong? And they would be like, hey, everyone else is doing it. So on the decline, rich got richer.
I found that funny.
It's like the decreasing middle class.
Poor got poorer.
There wasn't even a middle class.
Yeah, it was. It's kind of a difficult thing to say back then because back then things were so based on, and Europeans will inherit this from the Romans. The patricians and the plebeians will of course become the nobility and of course the commoners, right?
Or
And the middle class, as we're going to see later on, or the bourgeois or whatever you want to call them, are going to be seen like as those people who kind of don't fit the mold. They're kind of like, they're not in the standard block. What do we do with you? And so a lot of the commoners were kind of distrustful of them, and a lot of the nobles just looked down on them. But we'll get to that next year. So, okay, so we go with that. What about Roman slavery? What's going on with that? Cheap. So yeah,
Slave boom.
yeah. Sadly enough, yeah. So
Where's Rachel?
Settle. Settle.
slaves became very cheap. Why?
Because there were so many.
Yeah, that's right. Due
There's so many
to newly acquired or newly gained war prisoners. And see, this is one thing about slavery has been a very normal thing throughout most human societies throughout most time. We live in a very unique period when, at least officially, there's not supposed to be slavery. But
In our last 300 years, it's really changed.
But now I am going to say there is still human slavery going on
Oh, yeah.
everywhere, but it's underground now. But see,
It's less widespread and socially accepted.
exactly.
That's the new thing.
Now you can look at Mayans, Aztecs. You can even look at North Americans, like you can look here in Texas, like the Karankawa. You could look at throughout much of Asia, such as in Mongolia. You could look like almost anywhere in the world. Enslaved people were usually war prisoners. In fact, that's how African American slavery here in America started out. A lot of them, their ancestors were war slaves. Other African tribes conquered them, forced marched them over to the west coast of Africa, and sold them over to America. So the same is here for the people of Rome. Rome is expanding, they're conquering territories, and those who do not submit immediately die or are enslaved. So, and because of that, because they become so cheap, yeah, they're starting to use like machines. They're running them to death. They're totally getting rid of all of their poor Roman citizen labor and replacing them with people they don't have to pay. And this is going to be a problem too, say like here in the South before the Confederacy. A lot of poor farmers didn't really have very good livelihoods because they couldn't compete with enslaved people. So, I mean, it's just a reality. All right, amusements. How did those pesky Romans get their kicks?
By killing
Killing
lions.
people.
Yes. So, became very cruel. And yeah, they watched, many of them chose, like, Romans still had a lot of the games that the Greeks did, but they wanted them to become more deadly. Like,
Wrestling.
like for example, well, yeah, wrestling, but they actually chose boxing over wrestling. But the thing is, Greek boxing, they would have their boxers wrap up their hands with leather so you don't break your wrist. You know, a human being normally, especially a man, can punch hard enough to break his hand. But if you break your hand the first time, you're not going to fight very long. So they would bind them up with leather. But what the Romans would do is this. Then they would, after they bound your hands with leather, they put glue on it and they would dip it in like broken glass. And then they would have these guys use broken glass to beat each other. So the Roman forms of these games was cruel,
It's
you know?
just extreme Greek.
So
It's a very smart tactic.
It's the,
Became very
oh my
cruel.
gosh, were those the first like brass knuckles, but like they're glass knuckles?
Imagine there were.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Gladiators over like Greek style games, right? What about their theater?
They'll learn about.
They liked comedies. They were funny.
And they weren't just comedies. It's kind of like this. Their theater, like the Greeks' theater, was kind of like I don't know, PBS. You know, they're like watching some high refined stuff. Whereas like the Romans were watching South Park.
Slapstick.
Yeah, like
You'd rather
it was,
see and watch.
Looney Tunes.
Rated R.
so yeah, well yeah, but it was just like it's just like the Greeks might laugh at a funny situation, the Romans would laugh at fart jokes. It was essentially like that. So it was more body, it was more base and simple.
Hashtag third games.
Well, yeah, like
These Romans would do that.
And
There are
in
many
fact,
different types of Romans
the
would do
first Western novel is called the Satyricon. I got an untranslated copy of it here somewhere. I had to translate it in college. And yeah, it was basically just a bunch of gross stuff. I was just like, gosh, that's all I need to do Romans. So,
Can you give us an example?
no, it was gross.
I'm
Like I said, South Park stuff. All right,
They
so,
slash each other's necks off.
all
Oh my
right, so
gosh, who kills Caecilius?
poverty. So,
Lemons.
we already mentioned that. Rich got richer, poor got poorer, right?
Yeah, just strike that again.
Yeah, I mean, really, so we already got that.
That's just what happened.
Essentially just no work. No work and no land.
work, no money.
Yeah. Yeah, no work and no
No
land.
work, no work, no food.
And guess how the Romans are going to fix that? How they're going to fix it is they don't fix it. What they do is, we're seeing the Roman Empire, the emperor and his goons are going to take most of the land. And instead what they're going to do is they're going to start paying off the poor people of Rome by giving them a little bit of money every now and again and giving them free food. They're like, all right, we're going to give you these things and you're not going to violently revolt. And so a lot of the Roman citizens, they start living off of this, but they don't really do anything, right? So it's like a lot of, they kind of become a very subdued people. Tiberius Gracchus. So what's the deal with him? So what does he try to do? What does he try to give the poor citizens?
A chance
A chance of what?
A chance at life.
with
Yeah.
money
With money?
to have get jobs. Get
What
good.
did the patricians have that they weren't really
Land,
supposed to have?
land.
Yeah,
He tries to give the plebs land.
yeah.
The plebs.
That essentially the patricians had taken like when they weren't supposed to.
Did we get the word patriarch from the word patrician?
Yes, we did. Well, from
Well, what about matriarch?
that's from Mater.
Mater.
Pater Mater.
So patriarch plus mother or father.
Yeah, the matriarch archy would be like a mother rule.
Mhm.
So poor land, the patricians
The Patriot.
had essentially stolen, really, because it was supposed to be public land.
Yeah, Ryan is for them.
Now, so he makes a mistake though. What's his mistake? So he's one of the 10 tribunes, and
He
if-
did it illegally.
yeah, he removed one. He removed the tribune illegally. So he had a good cause in his heart. I'm trying to help my people. This guy is corrupt and got paid off. So if we get rid of him, he got rid of him. And so what did they do to him?
They killed him.
Killed him in a riot. Yep. They could beat him with a club or something like that, like
Yeah.
a broken stool leg.
I was
So-
reading something about that. They took a leg off of
Right.
your right leg.
See,
Beat him to death.
So removed a tribune who was supposed to look out for the poor. That was the whole reason that tribunes were enacted. From office. So the Senate had him killed. So he didn't play ball. He didn't play politics the way that they liked. He wasn't in on the scam. He wasn't in on the game. And when he tried to make things happen in this manner, they turned against him. He didn't realize just how powerful they were. Say what? Yeah, I'm sorry. You didn't tell us more, Jose. We were waiting. We were waiting for Jose to tell us more about it. Let down. All right, folks, we're going to go over the second half of this chapter tomorrow, so make sure you go ahead and pre-read it. We're going to have a test next week. I'll give you more information on that on Monday, but the test is more likely going to be on Thursday. See you later.
Now can we watch the video?
Yeah, sure.